Hola, me llamo Edward Roske. That is the entirety of Spanish I know. So the rest of the session will be in English. Welcome everyone to the future of reporting and analysis. We are at a really interesting time for taking a number and doing something with it. Artificial intelligence, machine learning are really exploding around the world. And right now, they're considered kind of odd add-on things where people say you have to have a lot of expertise in artificial intelligence to use it. You have to have a lot of degrees. You have to have a lot of experience to do machine learning. But it's going to be changing over time. So what we're going to talk about today is how we, all of us on today's presentation, can use artificial intelligence, can use machine learning. If you have any questions about anything you hear today, you can either ask me on Twitter, that's @ and then eRoske, or you can reach out to me on email, info@interrel.com. I'm going to start by going back 100 years. At the beginning of the 20th century, companies hired what were called CEOs, and it stood for Chief Electricity Officers. And these Chief Electricity Officers were hired to help plug companies, facilities, factories into the power grid. And these electricity officers were powerful. They were treated as a separate entity in their organizations. You had to go to them and essentially say, here's why you should approve my project to give me electricity. And they got so powerful that in some cases, the CEO, the chief executive officer, was almost answering to the chief electricity officer. So why don't you hear about this role anymore? Because electricity became assumed. It became a utility. Every department had access to it. It no longer required a separate staff to watch the electricity. And the chief electricity officers disappeared because their work was complete. This will eventually happen with cloud. It will eventually happen with digital technology, and it will eventually happen with artificial intelligence. It will just become part of our lives. When you access your mobile device, you don't think that you are holding in your hands the most powerful cloud access device ever created. But that's what you have. Everything you're connecting to, your photos, your email, your music, the web, TV shows, movies, all of those are stored on somebody else's server up there in the cloud. You're just accessing it. But it's become such a part of your daily life that you no longer think about it. And speaking of things that have become a natural part of our lives, that is me. And all those things in that picture now fit in your pocket. That phone we have, it can take pictures, it can play music, you can do books, you can do word processing, you can pull up recipes, you can record things. It turns out that this device even makes things called phone calls, although nobody uses it to make phone calls anymore. And no one is clamoring to go back. Nobody says, I want to go back to the days of having a phone with a cord attached to it, because we want to live in the present while preparing for the future. And sometimes in our personal lives, we move faster than our companies do. In our personal lives, we deal with artificial intelligence every day. When you pull up Google and you start typing in a search, it knows what you're thinking. It knows what it is you're about to type, and it auto-completes your thought for you. That is artificial intelligence that has become such a part of our life, we don't even think about it anymore. And the same thing is happening to business. So business is a little bit slower, but we are changing in terms of business analytics as well. We are going from a world of producing static reports or maybe data visualizations to instead having someone else, and that other thing is a computer, go through all of our information for us. We are not just going through a period of change, we are going through a complete revolution of how we consume data. All of you on today's presentation are going to have to start blazing that trail. You're going to have to start using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Today's presentation, today's content is about preparing you for 2020 and beyond. According to International Data Corporation, the global spending for AI systems will be around 97.9 billion US dollars in the year 2023. This year, it's only 37 billion USD. So it is essentially going to triple in a 3-year period. Why are we suddenly spending so much money on it? It was because it took a long time for artificial intelligence to get to the point where it was growing exponentially. In the words of Bill Gates, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. In other words, change seems really slow until we realize it was actually preparing to be really fast. Transformation is exponential, so we need to be exponential. It's not about how fast we change, it's about how much we are accelerating, how we are changing our rate of change. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. Today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but it is not a new concept. Artificial intelligence dates back to the 1940s. Alan Turing was a computer scientist and really invented the first truly usable programmable computer in the 1940s to help break a technology the Nazis were using called an Enigma machine. It was a cipher, a coded transmission machine. And he created a computer to figure out how to break all of those codes. And he said eventually computers are going to be indistinguishable from humans. And he created what we now call the Turing test, where a human communicating via keyboard to someone in the next room should not be able to tell if they are talking to a human or they are talking to a computer. We spent the next 40 years building artificial intelligence systems that were designed to mimic human behavior. And we told them how to do so. We said, here is how we act, here's how you should respond in that situation. But what started happening in the 1980s is we said it would be a lot better if the computer could go find out how to do things on its own. So focus less on a computer trying to be a human. Let's aim the computer at problems that it could learn how to do better than a human could. For instance, if I need to dig through terabytes, petabytes, exabytes of data, a computer can look through all that data and find patterns far better than a human ever could. So it gave rise to what was called machine learning, where the computers are not told specifically what to do, but they have the ability to learn, to get better. What's happened in the last 10 years is machine learning has evolved into deep learning, where all you do is give basic guidelines, guardrails, basic rules to the system. So rather than tell the computer, if you want to play chess, you have to look 6 moves into the future. We tell it exactly how to look ahead. We instead tell the computer, here are the basic rules of chess. Here's how a pawn moves. Here's how a king moves. Here's how a queen and a bishop and a knight and a rook move. We tell it the basic rules, and then the computer just starts playing itself. Hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of individual games, getting better and better at teaching itself. So it's not only teaching itself, it's teaching itself how to teach itself. And it's accelerating. And it's being used throughout our entire lives. When you go on social media, you'll find that the algorithm decides, the AI, what type of things will keep you on that website longer. Facebook, it measures themselves on how many seconds you spend looking at a Facebook feed. So the algorithm says, well, when Edward sees pictures of babies and puppies, he spends longer on the site. So we should show him more pictures of babies and puppies. But there's a whole lot more going on than that. There are algorithms on Facebook that are trained to spot posts that violate either an individual country's laws or the site's own policies. But these algorithms have advantages over humans. So humans do look at it as well, but computers don't have to sleep. They don't have to take holidays. They don't complain about bad performance reviews. They are quick. They scan thousands of messages every second, and they do it without ever getting tired. And of course, they don't need to be paid. The algorithms also can outperform humans. In the early days of Netflix, what it recommended you watch next was based on what other people said they were going to watch next. Now the algorithm knows that if it shows you this type of show and recommends this at the right point, you will stay on the Netflix platform longer. TikTok uses artificial intelligence to recommend which new users you should follow to, again, keep you on the TikTok platform longer. So from our consumer side, we are very used to interacting with artificial intelligence to the point that we no longer go, what is the algorithm that the social media is using? Or what is the algorithm that streaming service is using? We just assume it's now part of life. We are getting to the point where we start to assume that for business as well. This is from a survey I do every year called the State of Business Analytics. These are the 2020 results. This is a 100% stacked bar chart. The categories that you see along the bottom are, the first one is gaining better insights on past data. The next is analyzing the effect of external factors on the company. The third one is identifying complex correlations and trends. Fourth one is making better predictions for the future. And the fifth one is reducing headcount by having computers do analysis. Now, the more red and purple you see, this is where people say artificial intelligence is going to be either somewhat impactful or extremely impactful. It's interesting that only analyzing actuals and the threat of machines taking over and putting us out of a job draw ratings at the extreme end of the spectrum. People are thinking that either AI will either stall out and do nothing or completely upset the apple cart in those areas. It's also worth noting, though, that number 4, the somewhat impactful, the second highest impact rating, it dominates 4 out of the 5 categories. The only one that it doesn't dominate is reducing headcount. And this is interesting because if you look year over year, we do this survey every single year. We asked this exact same question last year. Last year, people were in the middle. They were saying it might have an impact on headcount, it probably won't, or it might have a little impact. We might lose a few jobs. Go 1 year into the future. Now we see 13% of people say artificial intelligence is probably going to require more headcount. We're going to have to add people that know how to do it. We're going to have to add data scientists and people that understand AI. On the other side, we now see 11.6% of people saying it's going to definitely impact jobs. It's going to put people out of their current careers. I did a survey recently where I asked 100 people if they could tell me what artificial intelligence and machine learning meant to them. Some of the answers are the older answers for AI. Human functions were performed by machines, computers thinking like humans. The bottom one seems a bit hysterical. The computer knows what you're thinking and what you're typing. That bottom one is the most accurate because when you're out there typing something into Google or when you're typing a text message in and it auto-completes, it's because it knows the rest of your thought. It knows that in 99% of cases, this is how that person tended to finish their thought. This is what they continued to type. And those machines can do it without the humans having to get involved. We also asked how artificial intelligence differed from machine learning. And what you see from most people is that they're similar, they're complementary, they're forms of one another. A lot of people said that one is incremental learning while the other is cognitive learning, but they disagree on which is which. Some people say AI solves problems by looking for patterns, while ML learns how to solve problems by improving the accuracy over time. Again, artificial intelligence is mimicking human behavior. Machine learning is learning how to solve problems over time. Deep learning is about coming up with an answer without ever being able to explain to us how it came up with it. We never gave it any rules. It just came up with ideas on its own. People ask if we use AI in our everyday life. Some people say not directly, but it's fairly pervasive now, so it's unavoidable. It's not just talking to your electronic devices around you that are doing AI. Every time we interact with any website, any application, it is doing some level of AI behind the scenes. And I did like that answer. My brain is artificially intelligent. Do you use AI in your business life? People tended to say no. So while the most common answer was in our personal lives, yes, most people said it's really not there in business, but it's starting to roll out. We're starting to get bots. We're starting to get robotic process automation. Let's look to the future. We asked people, how do you see it impacting over the next 3 to 5 years? The most answer we heard from everybody was it's going to get better and it's going to put lower skilled people out of a job. It's going to aggressively become part of our everyday life, our everyday business. Oh, the bottom one is a little scary. Artificial intelligence is going to get big in the military as robots are going to replace human beings on the battlefields. I guess it's good if a robot is shooting a robot. I think it's a little scary that a robot might decide to shoot me, but they did end nicely and said big in healthcare as well. Artificial intelligence, as I said, is not a new concept. It's been around for more than 50 years, but it's been staying out of the analytics space until fairly recently. But for the first time, it seems close enough for us to start seeing that it's going to impact us in the short term. We've been asking the same question for years, and people said it's always 5 years off until this year. In 2020, that's the gray line. Notice the top of the bell curve is all the way over there, right in the center of 2 years. So if you're not preparing for artificial intelligence now, it's not too late, but it's about to be. So is Oracle doing this? Absolutely. Oracle not only has artificial intelligence as a service, they have it embedded in their applications, they have it embedded in their data management platforms, they have embedded in their data science, they have entire pages about how they are using AI to help businesses make better business decisions faster. That's what we are here to do. We are here to be part of that modern analytics revolution. So to pause for a second and talk about the difference between something that is totally different than we've been doing and something that is a trend in terms of what we've been doing. The 6 ones on the left are really happening over time, and they've been constantly getting better. Data visualization. We've been looking at charts for a while. It's just become a lot more easy to build those charts, a lot easier to look at those charts, and people are demanding looking at charts and graphs and dashboards. Self-service. People got tired of waiting for somebody else to make a report. They now want to do ad hoc analysis, do their own report. Natural language. We have been able to request things without having to type code for a while. It's trending even better. Mobile. We now assume that we are not at our desks, we are wandering around our houses or the outside, and we need information at all times. We demand it in our mobile lives. Real time, people aren't happy saying, well, I have twice as much data, so I assume it's going to take twice as long to get the report. We need that report instantaneously. We all assume since our mobile devices get faster every year, our business should get faster every year. An analysis inversion. It used to be that in business, our jobs stopped when we handed somebody a report. It now is that our jobs start when we hand somebody a report. But those are all trends. There are 2 things, though, that are major disruptors. The first of those is artificial intelligence. It's something that we've been ignoring for the most part. But now the computers are better at predicting the future than we are. They are better at finding patterns. They are better at finding anomalies and better at explaining it to us than humans actually are. And there is no longer a question we cannot answer with big data. It used to be data had to be very well structured in a data warehouse or an ERP, a general ledger, some sort of internal system. But now we're looking external and saying, we might not know the answer in our company, but I can look external and see the answer to that question. I see that there are 3 generations of analytics. The first generation was really IT driven. It was driven by the technology department at your company. And it was about data governance. It was about controlling data to make sure everyone had the same set of numbers. Eventually, though, business got tired of waiting for new systems to appear. They said, rather than you build me a report, I want to make that report myself. And that led to generation 2. Generation 2 of analytics is about self-service. That generation, instead of being tech-driven, is being business-driven. The users are behind it. But eventually, users build really big spreadsheets, and they say, I can't even maintain these. I need somebody else to go look through all of my data. Who else is available? The computers. And that's the 3rd generation, the generation of computer-driven analysis, where they look through all of the data and they figure out what should that future actually look like. Back when we used to travel, I went to a conference. This was just last year, and I had an interesting experience when I got back from the conference. I landed at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. I live in Dallas, Texas, or as we call it, the center of coronavirus in the United States. I landed at DFW Airport, and I got on my phone, and I requested my Uber. And after a little bit of the guy saying, "Hey, are you the guy in the hat? I want to make sure I'm in the right place," he eventually found me, and I hopped in my Uber. He asked me where I'd been, and I said I was at a conference in Europe on how exponential technologies will be disrupting many industries. I didn't tell him, but one of the speakers was actually the head of Uber's self-driving car, their autonomous car business. But I said there was a big discussion on autonomous vehicles. He stopped me and he said, "You don't have to worry about that, Edward. Self-driving cars are probably 25 years off." Now, this is a full-time Uber driver. He is at the center of an entire industry about to be turned on its head in the next 2 years. This person was the most impacted person I could find, and he was also the least informed person I could find. We're here today to help you all understand you are the most impacted. You have to be the most informed. We have to be the ones leading this change. As we are pivoting away from humans doing the analysis during limited hours to a world where computers are working for us 24/7 to find patterns, to explain them back to us, it should be as simple as just a right click. I right click and say I want more information on this. The computer should then come back and explain it to us. How will this change the roles of traditional analysts, traditional business people? Their job used to be all about exploratory analysis, someone who went and found interesting problems with the data. Their job now will be one of explanatory analysis, someone who takes that data and makes sure that action actually occurs. We have data growing to the point where the amount of data on Earth doubles every 2 years. From the dawn of time till 2018, all of that data will double by the end of 2020 and double again by the end of 2022. There is no way humans can keep up, but the artificial intelligence should be able to go dig through that information and come back and explain it to us in Spanish or English or Hindi or Bengali. It should be a matter of not just presenting a big report to us, it should present the explanation, the understanding behind it. Oracle has a very large machine learning program. You can actually access something called OML, Oracle Machine Learning, sometimes called Machine Learning as a Service. If you want to learn more about it, I recommend you go to datascience.com. Oracle is already exposing various bits of machine learning inside of its products. If you want the analysis to help you guide you through a path, to help you finding problems, that's already there inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud's Explain functionality. If you want the ability to see different analytics and have the computer suggest to you what you should be doing, all you have to do is just right-click inside of Oracle Analytics, and it will give you direct access to advanced machine learning analytics. If you already have some machine learning routines that are written, maybe by a data scientist, maybe in R, you can now access those directly from Oracle Analytics Cloud. Maybe you have those machine learning models and you want them to run on massive multi-terabyte data warehouses. The old way of doing it was you took all that data and you passed it up and then you analyzed it in the reporting tool. Not anymore. Oracle Analytics can now run that model, that machine learning model, all the way down inside of Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse and then just show the results up inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud. And it's not just there. It appears inside of the Oracle Analytics servers, inside of the Oracle Analytics Fusion applications. It does natural language processing. It'll do data enrichment. And it's really about taking the very few people who used to know how to do AI, the data scientists, and marrying them up with analysts. We now have the ability to go off and run any of those analytics. This is Oracle Analytics Cloud. I'm going to do a quick bit of analysis where I'm going to look at revenue by month by company, and I'm going to look at it on a line chart. Now, it's a little difficult. I'm going to break it into a trellis chart so I can see each company in its own section. Well, this is pretty good, but I want to see, are these anomalies? How does this trend? So all I do is right click, and now I see reference line or trend line. And it said, well, with pretty good confidence, we're sure it's either trending up or trending down, and this is the band where it tends to fall. Now these numbers are pretty up and down, so we can't really tell easily, is it going up or is it going down? So why don't I forecast? Why don't I have it tell me what does that future actually look like? So I right click and say forecast. Now notice that gray area to the side, that's the future. Now it's using kind of its theory on what the best forecast model is, but I can change it. Maybe I don't want an ARIMA model, maybe I want an ARIBA model. I just simply go over to the forecasting machine learning model. I pick a different one. It was using a very simple, is it trending up or is it trending down? I want it now to take into account seasonality. So maybe during certain months, I always go up and certain months I always go down. I want you to predict those months even better than you were before. So I can easily switch to one of those new models. And I can pick and say which model most accurately forecasts my business. And behind the scenes, it's doing machine learning and it's doing it in real time. So now you can see based on this model, it actually thinks we're pretty likely to go down 3 months out. And you can change how far out it goes. So if you do have data scientists in your company, they are not immediately out of a job. They can do things that aren't already written inside of Oracle. So Oracle provides a few built-in machine learning models, but those data scientists could come up with models specific to your company. So they can say, oh, well, based on what I'm seeing, I think this is a better way to do that model. They can register that model. Then an OAC user can access that model. They can have it run against the underlying database in ADW. This takes the role of the data scientist and the analyst and has them speaking off the same book. They're reading the exact same words. They're seeing the exact same numbers. We can now, in the newest version that just came out in July, we can now even take those machine learning models and say they're part of the data flow. So when the data comes in, I want you to immediately analyze it and only show me the results after it's passed through that machine learning. We have the ability to do things as part of that analysis, like we could have it unpivot data. We could have it do anomaly detection, where it actually looks through your input data without a predefined model and just looks for things that don't make any sense. For instance, maybe you're trying to find unusual financial transactions. It will go out and highlight those for you and say there might be fraud in this area. We can use it for data sampling, where it creates small random samplings of the data, lets you do statistical analysis on a smaller set that's faster, looks for drivers, looks for attributes. It can do dynamic clustering, so you can cluster your input data without a predefined model. Maybe you want to characterize and discover customer segments for marketing purposes. Now, if all this seems amazingly far off, I want to take you back for a second to the 1980s. And there was a movie I really liked. It was Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. And the Starship Enterprise was sent from the future back to the quaint days of the 1980s.
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
In the 1980s, by the way, that is a first edition Mac with a very, very large mouse and a very small screen. Back in the 1980s, we thought the idea that you could talk to computers was something that wouldn't happen for hundreds of years. And now it's commonplace. We assume we can talk to even our little mobile devices. And we're starting to see that coming out in the world of analytics as well. So I can now take Oracle Analytics Cloud and I can say, I want to see, and I can speak, I want to see profit value by product, by month. Now it's doing a couple of things here. It's not only converting what I say to text, it's also saying these might not be exact terms in the database. There might not be something called profit value. There might not be product, there might not be month, but it knows how to find things that are close to those. Just like Google says, you search for this, but you probably meant this, we can now do that inside of Oracle Analytics. But then it's even smarter. It didn't just show me a grid. It came back and said, you probably want to see this on a trend. Maybe you want to see it on a bar chart, or maybe you want to see all three areas condensed. So it's smart enough to learn the types of things I was probably going to ask for. You can do all this as well on your mobile device. There's a tool out there called Oracle Day by Day. And it's using artificial intelligence so that if I ask for something, such as I want to see revenue by customer segment, I can just speak to it. And it also gets smarter over time. So it knows, because it's doing machine learning, it knows what I'm probably going to ask for next. It also begins to learn what you look for the most often. So if, for instance, I always tend to look at revenue by product type, by month, it's going to have that data ready. It's going to have it already prepared in charts, just waiting to show it to me. If there's a type of chart I tend not to look at, I personally don't understand radar charts. I want to understand them. I'm just not that smart. My phone has learned that. Oracle Day by Day now no longer shows me those radar charts because it knows it's not something that I tend to look at. So that's natural language processing. Natural language processing is listening to what I'm saying and converting it to text. And it is just assumed. Just like the professor, who's actually Scotty from the Enterprise, assumed that the Mac back in 1984 could listen to him, we assume that our devices can now listen to us when we talk. What still stuns us a bit is when it comes back and talks back to us, especially when it gets it pretty good. What really confuses us, what I used to think was impossible, is that a computer could look at a chart and explain to me what it was seeing, or look at a bunch of data and find issues and explain them back to me. We have that now inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud. Oracle Analytics Cloud does what's called natural language generation, and this is an AI feature that converts columns, rows, or graphic visuals into narrative text. NLG, natural language generation, is relying on the Oracle Cloud AI engine to generate narrative insights based on data, something that isn't available traditionally. And it's there in multiple products. I'll show it to you in a few different ways in a second, but you can see it in Explain inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud, Oracle Analytics Server, Oracle Analytics Desktop. You can see it inside of the free product, Oracle Synopsis, that any of you can download for free today. You can see it in narrative views inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud. So for instance, right now I'm looking at profit, but if I right-click on profit, I can choose Explain Profit. And it comes back and it says, well, here are some basic facts about profits. And it's showing me a chart, but it's explaining what that chart means. Profit on each area ranges from negative 13,000 to 12,000, and you have about 144 on average. The charts below summarize the value of profit. I scroll down a little bit further. These are all the different ways it thinks I might want to visualize profit. It's not assuming I want just one grid of data. It says, here are all the different ways you could spin it around. Figure out which ones you like. And once you decide what you like, you can add it to an overall dashboard. It will also remember what types of things you're looking at going forward. So you don't have to look at them in just this way. But I could also say, I want to see the anomalies of profit, the things that don't make sense. So you'll notice profit, I actually expected it to be up here at this green bar, but for this certain area, for corporate, it actually fell under it, and here's the blue bar where it came in. And it says, based on the profit they should have had, we lost $33,000 compared to where we thought they should be. And it's doing it in English. So, or again, it could do it in any language. If your language by default is Spanish or Hindi or Russian or Mandarin, it would be explaining it to you in that language as well. So if you don't understand what that chart means, you got the language right above it. It does all that for profit. Profit's what's called a continuous variable, so it's fairly smoothed out. I could look at something different. I could look at a categorical variable, an attribute, like product category, and I get even more options. I see not just basic facts, like here's how it breaks out. Here are some different ways you can look at it. I also say, what are the drivers behind it? What causes a buyer to get one category versus another one? What are the segments that explain why product category is the way it is? So I have additional options that I didn't have before, and they're all explained to me in plain English. That's pretty impressive, but they're probably doing it with the power of a server. Actually, you can do it on your phone as well. Synopsis is free, totally free. You don't have to pay anything for it. You don't have to connect it to Oracle Analytics Cloud. If you have an Android or an iPhone, go get this app. It is totally free. Go ahead and look for Oracle Synopsis. What it does, if somebody sends you a text file or a spreadsheet, you can right-click on the email in your phone and say, open it in Synopsys. It will show you all of the charts, all of the graphs, and it will explain it to you in English as well. So somebody sent me a file for looking at movies, what their gross on the movie was versus what the budget on the movie actually was. It's, again, doing this for free because it can consume any type of spreadsheets, any type of text file, and it's actually using machine learning to not only profile the data, it's using it to figure out what the best type of charting would be. And again, it's doing natural language generation to come back and explain it to me in plain English. I also can tell it how deep I want it to go. So right now, as of June, domestic gross represents 13.6% higher than the average expectation for right now. And I can dig into it. And if I want, I could open it up in Oracle Analytics if I owned it. But if I didn't, I could stay right here. So for every chart, it shows you the high level, and then down below, it shows you some details about that chart. So where can we go beyond this? This seems really amazing. Well, what if I had Oracle Analytics Cloud? They're giving me that for free. Language narrative is just a chart type in Oracle Analytics. So I'm going to drag over by company. I'm going to drag by revenue. Notice it explains it to me in natural language. When taken together, the three companies have a total value of $5 million US and an average of 1.6. Stock Plus is the largest. If I drag it around, it spins around how it's doing the analysis and says you don't want to analyze by company anymore. You want to analyze by month. So here are some months where we saw we had the most revenue. Here are some months we saw where we fell below what the average actually was. I could drag in other things. I could have multiple attributes, and it gives me extended real-time language generation, breaking down now not just by month, but by month, by company. So for each of the companies I own, here's how it actually breaks out. When I show this to people, the first response most people have is, this is so amazing, it is indistinguishable from magic. I assure you, this is not only real, it's in its second generation. This technology actually rolled out more than a year ago to Oracle Analytics Cloud. They've actually been getting better with it in terms of the type of analysis it's able to do, the type of natural language generation it's able to provide at this point. So it is not magic. Once people understand that, their second question tends to be, is this going to put me out of a job? This tends to come from analysts. Because traditionally, this was my first job when I started in business. It was analyzing income statements. It was looking at data, trying to find things that are now explained to me by the computer. And that gets back to what I said at the beginning. We have to change from people who explore and find interesting things in the data and ones who make sure action happens. We have to go from exploratory analytics to explanatory analytics. So what is Oracle coming up with now? The first thing they're working on is what's called adaptive intelligence, where maybe I always ask a second question after the first one. So I start by looking at the companies all together, but almost always I then say, show me the companies separated afterwards. The system should begin to learn that. It should adapt and understand what type of questions I was asking, and it should pre-analyze all that data. So you saw at the beginning, I told it, show me the trend line, show it to me with a confidence interval, and then forecast. Then I switched to another forecast method. It will begin to get smarter and know, Edward always asks for a forecast after he looks at a trend. We should just go ahead and run that model behind the scenes and have it waiting for him. The machine learning is transitioning to deep learning, where it's constantly running, it's assessing itself and saying, how good am I at predicting? And it keeps improving its model. Without ever having to explain how it's getting better, it's just getting smarter over time. That gets into that deep learning, that neural networking side. It also assumes that you will want to interact with it the way you interact with a human. And the way you interact with a human is they don't just walk up and say something to you and then stay perfectly quiet. That would be very weird and scary. You ask them questions. So they'll say, hey, I noticed you missed revenue last month. You might say, what changed? What went down to cause me to miss revenue? And the person would say, well, the West didn't do as well as it was supposed to. Oh, well, is it trending upward? Yes, West is getting better. They are making bots that will do the exact same conversation. So just like the early days of artificial intelligence, where you were supposed to interact with the computer like it was a human. We are getting there from an Oracle standpoint so that you can ask questions of the system like it's a human. They're also trying to go into more of a storytelling mode. So instead of just giving you a bunch of facts, they want to walk you through a narrative to make sure business gets better over time. Now, you might be thinking at this point, I'm probably out of a job. Don't worry. According to MIT, this is from the end of the year of 2019, they said there are 10 things they're having a really hard time teaching computers to do. Robots and AI, these are far harder than you'd think. Turns out taking a hot cup of coffee, grabbing it, bringing it up to someone's lips, tilting it just slightly so a little sip happens, and then pulling it down, then tilting a little more without burning the person, without hitting them in the face with a cup, that's really difficult. And different people sip coffee different ways, so the computers have to respond to it. While they know how to play rock, paper, scissors, they're not very good at it yet. They're not very good at polishing furniture. They tend to scrub the top of it off, which is not very good. They are bad at smoking cigarettes, which means they're not dying of cancer. Smoking a cigarette is actually a very complicated thing. You have to grasp something very, very delicately. You have to bring it forward. You have to know how to breathe and have to breathe out. It's a very tricky thing. There are also some physical things the computers aren't, or robots aren't good at. Running a marathon, high jumping, shot put. Computers and robots, they don't have enough battery to run for 26 miles or 50 kilometers. They weigh too much to high jump. It's very tricky to figure out how to shot put something in a traditional format. But this is it. This is all we are down to. AI has started to impact everything we see and everything we do. This is a movie on Netflix. It was called The Irishman. Artificial intelligence has made its way to Hollywood. Martin Scorsese spent millions of dollars on artificial intelligence because he wanted to take the actors in his movie and show what they looked like 20, 25 years earlier. So the artificial intelligence knew how to look at each person, and then they told it, I want to see that person 10 years younger. I want to see them 25 years younger. And this movie came out last year. So basically a year and a half ago. And it cost millions to be able to take someone and basically change them in a way that seemed realistic. And when I first saw this last year, and I said, well, eventually this will come to probably video games where you will have characters in video games that seem realistic, but the computer is generating them in real time. I said eventually this technology of the ability to age someone or touch them up in real time or drop them into a movie is going to come to the consumer. I don't know if you know this, but I starred in Captain America. To be clear, that's actually the original role was played by Chris Evans. I have replaced Chris Evans's face with my own face and my beard throughout the entire video segment. And you think, wow, Edward, did you spend millions to do that? No, I spent $3 US to do that. There is an app that you can get from your iPhone. It's called Reface, R-E-F-A-C-E, that will in under 7 seconds drop you into any movie clip or any GIF you see. That same technology Martin Scorsese a year and a half ago had to pay several $millions for is now available for essentially $3 to put yourself as any character into anything you want. And artificial intelligence is also helping people. It's not just for fun, for dropping us into movies. In Seattle, Washington, where we had one of our first major outbreaks of coronavirus, they had 40,000 people that they had to screen and triage, meaning decide how bad they were, and they had to do it in a matter of hours. So they created a bot, basically a helper called Apollo, that could walk people through all of the questions that they needed to ask and do it in a very friendly way. They surveyed people afterwards. It was very, very good at determining who needed to be immediately seen, who needed to go in for COVID-19 tests, who was probably okay. One of the things that surprised them was they said that the bot had better bedside manner than any doctor they had ever spoken to. It's a computer they were talking to, and they felt the computer was nicer to them than anybody else they'd spoken to. So where is this going? It's going to result in a whole lot of money if you position yourself in the right place. Right now, the 5 fastest growing companies are not Europe. It's not the United States. It's not Japan. It's not China. The fastest growth in AI hiring in the last 5 years is in Singapore, is number 1. Number 2 is Brazil. So South America comes in at number 2 in terms of AI hiring growth, followed by Australia, followed by Canada, followed by India. 58% of companies say they will be adopting artificial intelligence, have adopted it last year. It was only 47% the year before. So we saw an 11% increase in just 1 year. Sometimes the United States leads, like in coronavirus. We are number 1 in the world. Very, very proud of that. But in other times, we don't. In the United States right now, only 1/4 of 1% of jobs really are around kind of artificial intelligence. It's been increasing. Machine learning makes up the largest portion of it. So if you wanted to devote yourself to something, I would focus on the analytics side, really understanding how it's using AI, how you can deliver that information. I know this has been a lot of data over the last 45 minutes. I'm going to give you a few other places to go to. If you go out to interrel.com, sorry, that was yesterday. I have the date wrong. So today, we covered the future of reporting and analysis. If you want to find out how artificial intelligence is there from the finance side, if you want to understand how it's affected Essbase, if you want to see some of these really cool things inside of OAC Oracle Analytics Cloud, I have a series of webcasts coming up. It's not a commercial. These are totally free. Just go to interrel.com. You can sign up for any of those. If this really interests you, if you're really interested in analysis and really interested in Essbase or really interested in taking data, taking numbers and doing something with it, there is an entire free conference coming up in October. It's free to anyone. So if you're with Oracle, with a customer, if you're with a partner, if you're unemployed, whoever you are, this is a free event. It's October 19th through the 22nd. Just go out to epm.bi/Hyperion, learn a whole lot more about analytics, learn a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning. With that, I know we have a couple of questions coming in. Idlewild, is there anything that I can answer?
Yes, there was one in the chat.
Oh, the one about learning AI?
Yeah.
Sure.
What is your suggestion?
Yeah, so the question was, if I want to learn AI, what do you recommend? What's the first steps to prepare me? So my answer differs depending on if you want to go into AI right now or if you want to go into AI in 2 years. And the reason I say it's a different answer is right now, my advice to everybody, go out to Udemy, letter UDEMY.com, and pick one of the artificial intelligence quick hit courses. They were having a sale yesterday. They were $10 to go through an entire AI course. The best thing you can do in the short term, if you really want to get started in AI, is learn R or Python, because right now it still takes a bit of a coding methodology to get better at artificial intelligence. My answer differs in 2 years because that skill set of how we do AI in a lot of cases today, where we have to personally write those machine learning models, is going away. If you want to prepare yourself for the future, my advice, go get a free copy of Oracle Analytics Cloud. We talked about some of the always free services. You can get a starter trial of Oracle Analytics. It has every single AI thing I've shown you is there inside of Oracle Analytics. The best way is you just got to start playing with it. So go out to Oracle Analytics Cloud, download it, appreciate the natural language generation, go run those machine learning models, figure out how to apply to your data. That type of tool, that type of technology is going to really make you valuable in the next couple of years. My advice to all of you, and that's an awesome question to end on, the best way is to get started, if I may quote Walt Disney, is to quit talking and begin doing. I've given you a foundation. I've given you a lot of high level on AI and ML. On Oracle Analytics Cloud, you can actually go out to oracle.com, click on Oracle Analytics. They have a series of videos that walk you through getting started, where they'll tell you how to get that free copy available, how to get it stood up, how to start running and start playing with a lot of this AI stuff. Please get out there and start playing around, because artificial intelligence, machine learning, I say they're the future, they're really the now. Anybody building new reports, new analysis is really turning to AI and ML to help them do that. I hope you've learned a lot over the last hour. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at info@interrel.com. If you've learned things, I encourage you to pass them on. I'm a big believer in taking what I know and giving it away for free. Take what you've learned and share it with the world. Go out on Twitter, tag me when you share other people. Say, thanks, Roske, here's what I learned. I will retweet it. We will share it with everybody else. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate, I wish I could be there in person. Some of my favorite countries I visited are all down there in South America. I was talking to Idlewise. I've always said that if I could move to any country in the world, at the moment, my top ranked one is Uruguay. There are lots of other awesome countries throughout Latin America and South America. I really like the Beatles, and they do down there as well. So I can't wait to get out there in person. I hope to see you all next year in 2021.
Thank you so much, Edward. That was so amazing. We have learned a lot, and there's a lot of, it's an incentive for all of us to continue with learning about machine learning and artificial intelligence. Thank you so much for this. Muchas gracias, gente, por estar acá. Thank you so much. Y recuerden que seguimos en el Analytics Track. Hay más sesiones, así que sigan registrándose. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
Bye.